Hey everyone, today we're going to go over some key concepts in life that I've learned over the past year and that I've read about, that I've had conversations with others, that I've listened to a couple videos on, that I've read a lot of books about. So these are some key concepts in life that I thought I wanted to share to you all. So let's get right ahead into it. Okay. All right, some key concepts in life. All right, guys. So the first main idea here that we're going to talk about is the notion of dopamine detox. Dopamine detox. Now, what is dopamine? Some have heard of dopamine maybe in their AP psychology class or through some self-help books. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain that sends signals whenever you're engaging in a pleasure-inducing activity. Whenever you're engaging in an activity that stimulates, gives pleasure, makes you feel quote good, dopamine is released in your mind. And this neurotransmitter sends messages from neuron to neuron signaling that, hey, I'm happy, I'm satisfied, I am feeling pleasure. The problem with dopamine is that I'm just going to draw a little simple diagram. So this is our current baseline level of dopamine, right? This is our baseline level of dopamine. Now, what happens when we are constantly releasing dopamine? So, what happens when we're constantly engaged in these pleasure-inducing activities? So, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, all these social media platforms, they're designed to capture our attention. And so, when we consume these different platforms, when we consume these short video platforms, the amount of dopamine in our mind, the baseline level increases to around here, right? This is our new normal. This is our new normal. And now what happens? Now we crave for more. Now this isn't enough. Now we need more of that YouTube. Now we need more of that Snapchat. Now we need more of that Instagram. Now we need more of these social media platforms because this is our new baseline level of dopamine. We've shifted our perception of normal. We've shifted our new normal, our baseline level of dopamine. And so this is how like addictions and this is how, behavior is in addictions form, right? Because we've increased our baseline level of dopamine. Now we're going to need more and more to get the same sense of pleasure. Now on the flip side, what if we reduced our baseline level of dopamine by disengaging in all of these different pleasure-inducing activities? YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, all these social media platforms. What if we just simply removed them from our life? Well, then our baseline level of dopamine is going to decrease. So now what does that mean? That means that we don't need those activities to get a better sense of pleasure, better sense of happiness. So what does this mean? This means that the quote unquote boring things in our life will become more fun. The boring things become more fun because our baseline level of dopamine has been decreased. Now we don't need more and more and more YouTube or social media, right? Our baseline level of dopamine has been decreased. So then we need the boring things in our life become more fun, become more easier to do, and they stimulate happiness and pleasure as well because we're not getting that pleasure, we're not getting that happiness from those external materials. So that's dopamine detox. And I attribute a lot of my like academic success and all the straight A's from using this single practice of dopamine detox, of removing pleasure-inducing activities. And this is like, you can think of this as like your typical like social media platforms, YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, anything you feel that like cultivates this sense of pleasure, cultivates this sense of satisfaction that you know you shouldn't be engaging in regularly. Removing those from your life, that's dopamine detox. And I assure you, this would have a tremendous effect on the baseline level of dopamine that you have and how much fun you have doing the things that matter to your life. So that's dopamine detox. The second idea here is everything happens within the mind. Everything happens within the mind. And I mean literally everything. Everything happens in the mind. 99.999% of all of the world's problems occur literally within the mind. Okay, an event is just an event, right? Reality is just reality. The only thing that makes reality a problem, the only thing that makes the situation a problem is how we think about it. It's all in our minds. It's all in our thoughts. Our thoughts and our mind create the experience of life that we have and that we live. So when we understand this fundamental principle that our opinions, our thoughts, our perceptions of events, our anger, our ego, our jealousy, all of that are literally thoughts and emotions and perceptions that are in the mind, that are within the mind. Once we understand this fundamental idea, we can understand that we can literally perceive anything as fun. We can make anything as fun. We can make anything the way we want it to. We can feel any emotion in any situation that we want because everything happens within the mind. Number 3 is do fewer things better. Do fewer things better. This whole hustle culture, like super busy, you know, toxic hustle culture vibes has the sense that the more things that we do, the more productive we are, the busier we feel, and we feel like we're getting a lot of things done. But the entire concept of doing fewer things better is that by cutting out on a lot of the inessential items in our life, we do fewer things and we do them at a higher quality. And what does this mean? Instead of doing 10,000, instead of doing 5 things at once, instead of doing 5 projects at once, instead of overcommitting yourself to 5 different things, instead of seeming like you're very busy, how about do fewer things? How about do only 1 or 2 of your main 5 priorities and doing them really, really well? This has 2 benefits. First benefit is your mental health will automatically improve. You won't feel like you're constantly being overwhelmed. You won't feel like you're constantly being dragged into meetings and admin related tasks about each of these different projects. Your mental health will improve. Secondly, naturally, the quality of what you do will improve as well. Why? Because you're doing fewer things. You're narrowing your attention and focus and energy on a limited number of tasks and projects. And if we look like through evolutionary or through slow productivity or through a lot of these books and journals that are coming out, it's all about slow productivity, doing things at a slow and steady pace. People who have created great things in the past, they haven't done it by doing 10 different things at once. They haven't done it by doing even 5 different things at once. They have done it by having a single task, a single project, or even a couple projects, and narrowing their energy and focus on the one thing that they want to do. So that's the entire idea of doing fewer things better. Allows for better mental health and it actually allows you to do better in the things that actually matter to you. Number 4 is creating habits and systems. Creating habits and systems. And the reason behind why we want to create habits and systems is that things can change. The only constant in our life is change. We know our emotions can change. We know our identity can change. People can change around us. People's emotions can change around us. People's perceptions of us can change around us. Jobs can change. Managers can change. People's roles may change around us. But the thing that grounds us is our values, our habits, and systems that we do every single day. So in terms of habits, right, these are the habits that you have. Your reading habits, your morning routine, your writing habits, the things you do on a day-to-day basis, practicing a skill, practicing a craft, practicing a skill or practicing a craft. These are the things that make up your habits. The second thing I like to call are systems. Systems are rules, practices, things you do that have a structure and are defined, right? It doesn't change by day to day. For example, a system for getting good grades could be dopamine detox. That was the system that I had. And you could have your own system, but the key for having a system is it needs to have a structure and it needs to be defined. It needs to have a definite set of rules that you can follow and that you can ground yourself in. Because things can change, days can change, but systems don't change. And it's systems that help you win and create championship type environments. Number 5, and number 5 sort of goes along with the idea that everything happens in the mind, is that happiness comes from within, and your fun comes from within. This is related to the fact that everything happens in the mind. So look, external things will never give you a sense of happiness. And why is that? If external things did give you a sense of happiness, then everyone would like the same thing, right? There's some people that like apples. There's some people that don't like apples. There's some people that like oranges. There's some people that don't like oranges. If the happiness literally was in the external object, everyone would like the same exact thing. But no, where does the happiness of you eating an apple come from? The happiness of you eating an apple, the happiness of you eating a banana, the happiness of you consuming or any material object literally comes from your reaction to that thing. The happiness is not in the external object, but instead it comes from your thoughts, your reaction, your comparison to other things you've already experienced relative to that object. So that's what we have to remember, is that happiness comes from within. And because happiness comes from within, we can make anything and anything that we do, we can make it fun, right? We can adapt our mind to make any activity fun, because the happiness is not external, right? If we go out looking for happiness in a banana, you will not find happiness in the banana. The happiness is only created in your mind through your thoughts, right? It's literally your reaction. And this is the same thing with like events and situation. The happiness from an event, the event is just the event, right? The event is just the event. The happiness comes from you applying some sort of comparison, or you applying some sort of emotion that, again, happens within the mind. It comes from within to that event. The event itself, literally, you cannot, if you do a scan, right, or you run studies or experiments literally on an object, you will not find happiness, right? It only comes from within, and that you can have control over. You have control over that. So that's number 5. Happiness and the fun comes from within. Number 6 is the entire idea that of extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation. So obviously this is very heavily studied in the field of psychology. Intrinsic motivation is whenever you feel internally driven to do a task. Extrinsic motivation is during you're doing a task for the end goal, the end reward. You have that in mind. And what you realize is whenever you're initially intrinsically motivated to do something, first, your performance is better. You have a deeper emotional attachment, emotional engagement to the activity. And the other thing is that as soon as you introduce an extrinsic reward to that activity, your intrinsic motivation will automatically decrease. So for example, they did some study on, so there are these groups of kids who loved to draw. They absolutely loved to draw. That was what they did. They drew every day at school, whatever. Then they introduced this extrinsic reward that, hey, the more that you draw, or if you draw for a certain amount of time, we'll give you X number of candy. And what they realized, after they did this for a couple months, is that students or these kids, they started to draw less. And they did a survey. Their enjoyment of drawing, of doing what they originally loved to do, decreased due to this external reward that was introduced of candy. So really, what we need to focus on is being internally driven, doing something not for the external reward. And it's very hard to do. This is very easily said. But doing something because you're emotionally engaged with it, trying to find a way to enjoy it. And again, a lot of this is related, right? Happiness comes from within, everything happens in the mind. Trying to find a way to make an activity fun and to do things because you're internally driven to do them, not because of some external reward. That's always going to yield positive results. And when you're internally motivated to do something, you can do it for a longer period of time. That's number 6. Number 7 is the idea that ego ruins everything. Ego ruins everything, right? Obviously, there's a difference between ego and confidence, right? Confidence is having faith in your abilities based off of the amount of preparation, based off the amount of practice that you've done. But ego is this sense of entitlement that you feel based off of your past accomplishments, based off of your title, what you've done in the past, right? We think that's like, we feel this is who we are, right? Our identity, so ego's entitlement. Our identity is this title that we have. Our identity is the accomplishments that we've done, right? And the reason that this ruins everything is because, this causes a bunch of conflicts. I already argued that majority, 95% of the problems in the world come from a man's inability to control his or her ego. So that's number 7. Ego ruins everything. Number 8 is reading is the medicine for the mind. Reading is medicine for the mind. The reason that reading is medicine for the mind is that reading allows us to comprehend and understand different perspectives. Someone may have studied psychology for 20 years at Stanford, or they've done 10 years of research. You're getting all of that information in a book, and it offers you so many different avenues of thought, so many avenues of perspectives that you can frame your perception of the world by. And by reading different books, you open your mind to different avenues of thought, avenues of perspectives. You open your mind to different paradigms, new ways of thinking that you've never seen before, that you've never thought of before, and you can apply those to your life. And so that's why reading is the medicine for the mind, because we think in one way, someone else may not think in that way. And by doing reading, by having these books, we're able to understand different perspectives. And so cultivating a habit of reading is essential for developing these different perspectives. the last rule I have is holding yourself to your own standard, right? The expectations of others should not define you. The expectations of others should not define how you should not be the expectation that you have for yourself. You should have your own standard that you have. You should have your own values that you stick by. You should have your own systems and habits that you have and the values that you hold yourself accountable to and the standard that you hold yourself accountable to. So the influence of other people's expectations doesn't affect you, right? What other people say, what other people do, doesn't have an influence on you. So that's why it's important to hold yourself to your own